got to be detailed, precise, and informed.
That's DPI.
Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that is Tyler over there. And we have got another great offseason episode for you guys. We're going to start off with our NFL Mount Rushmore of just players, no coaches. We wanted to see which players we would put on an NFL version of Mount Rushmore. I'm very curious to see how Tyler's will differ from mine. And then we're also going to cover something pretty unique that Tyler came up with. Tyler, I'll let you explain kind of what that is before we get into what the rest of the episode. And then we have one more thing after that.
Yeah, so this is our midsummer episode, basically, with 4th of July just past us, where Mount Rushmore is a great item for that. But then also summer is usually baseball. Now, this is not a baseball podcast, but in spirit of that midsummer episode, I've created this idea of what would football look like if it had a scorecard. It's one of the more famous things at a baseball game. You see people with their scorebook, keeping track of the game flow, keeping track of the stats. What would it look like if football had that as well? I'm going to present to you my idea of a football scorecard.
Yeah, and you're not going to want to miss it. It's very unique. And finally, we're going to have another ref call for you guys. It is a Lions ref call, but it's not that ref call. It's not the one you're thinking. That one's still coming. But this is going to be the Jim Schwartz rule all the way back on Thanksgiving of 2012. So lots of great stuff for you guys, but we'll jump right in with NFL Mount Rushmore. Tyler, did you want to do your Mount Rushmore first?
Yeah, so one thing that I always get upset about when I see people's Mount Rushmore over anything is they just make their Mount Rushmore their top 4. That's not how I decided to do it. When Mount Rushmore was created, the architect of it, he wanted to have a founder, an expander, a preserver, and a unifier. So in this case, Washington is the founder, Jefferson is the expander. He purchased territory that doubled the United States. Theodore Roosevelt was the preserver. He was a big nature guy. And then Abraham Lincoln with the Civil War was the preserver. So that's kind of the thought process that I had when I created my Mount Rushmore.
Interesting. Okay, so you're more mirroring the NFL, the actual Mount Rushmore sculpture in the NFL rather than just top 4 players.
Yes. And so with my first one, I think of the founder. This is where I would love to do like Vince Lombardi, but since we can't do since we can't do coaches or owners, or that we have to go with players, my first one is Bart Starr. He was the first 2 Super Bowl MVP winners. He won a lot more championships prior to the Super Bowl. He really is the guy that he's also the guy that started the QB sneak also, by the way, in Super Bowl 1. But Bart Starr is my founder of NFL players, essentially. He really kicked off and founded the modern NFL game, I think.
So I kind of went the same route as you. Since it's the NFL, we didn't specify Super Bowl era, non-Super Bowl era. So my founder is Otto Graham, former quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. And they invented the MVP in the middle of his time as a player. So he won a few of those, 3 of them actually. And of course, he's a Hall of Famer and a 7-time All-Pro. But played from 46 to 55, and he was one of the most prolific quarterbacks ever until the modern era quarterback came along. So my founder is Otto Graham.
That's a good one. I like that. And you mentioning old Browns players too. I'm also thinking of Jim Thorpe as a possible like honorable mention for the founder as well, going all the way back to the 1920s, I believe.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Jim Thorpe, though. I think that he's very famous, but how many All-Pros do you think Jim Thorpe has?
See, I don't know. It's all about the vibes, and I feel like that's kind of where Washington was too. It's all about the vibes. You're getting a little bit of history. Well, Washington had some controversy within his presidency, but the vibes is that he's this great man. He's the great founder, and that's where Thorpe is.
Washington has more terms than Jim Thorpe has All-Pros. Jim Thorpe has 1 All-Pro, and Washington has 2 terms. So for that reason alone, Jim Thorpe is more like John Adams to me, a very instrumental founder of the United States, a brilliant guy, but he only served for for president for one term and is generally forgetful outside of that. But he was crucial to the founding of the nation. But once the nation was founded, John Adams fades into obscurity. So if we're going to compare a player to Washington, we've got to give it to a guy like Otto Graham, who mastered passing and really, I know that the timelines don't work there, but he really mastered the art of throwing the ball and brought the NFL to where it is outside of just regional games featuring the Dayton Triangles, so.
I respect that. Otto Graham kind of was the founder of that forward pass. Bart Starr kind of becomes the founder of the Super Bowl era on that 60s and 70s Packers team. But going on to the next one, Jefferson is known as the expander. It's another founding father, of course, but he's the expander. He expanded the game or expanded the land. And so for me, I think about more the 80s era. The 60s and 70s was football, kind of getting into modern form, but it really shot off in the 80s. In my mind, 80s and 90s. And I think about what's that legendary 1980s team, and it's the 85 Bears. So my second spot is Walter Payton. Even though Walter Payton actually never scored in that 85 game, in that 85 Super Bowl game, but he was the foundation of that Bears team. I think that 85 Bears is instrumental in expanding the game. I think Walter Payton was instrumental in expanding the running back position and just expanding the game as general. So Walter Payton is my second figurehead on my Mount Rushmore.
I like that choice because the expander role is someone that I also identified from the 80s, from another legendary 80s team, even though this team kind of bled into the 90s. But I went with Jerry Rice because I didn't want them all to be quarterbacks.
Oh,
yeah. And I thought Jerry Rice played for so long, and he's such a household name, and he broke all the receiving records that still stand to this day. Like, he expanded the game in ways that no other non-quarterback was really able to do during that time.
I like that. And I agree with you that I didn't want it to all be quarterbacks as well. Now Jerry Rice is great. He still holds so many receiving records, even as the game today has shifted into clearly a passing game. Jerry Rice still holds so many records.
Yeah, but so what's your next player? Because I do like Walter Payton. I think that makes sense.
I struggled a lot with this one because on top of me not wanting to go all offensive player or all quarterbacks, I also didn't want to do all offensive players. So for the preserver, I wanted to go a defensive player. What's up?
I think this might be the same because I'm also going to do a defensive player here.
And there's so many defensive. Also, we did not discuss our parameters on this outside of just it must be all players. But I thought of just what is the defensive player. There's so many names that you can think of, but a name that I thought of was just Lawrence Taylor. Is that this?
Yeah, and Lawrence Taylor, one of the only defensive players to win MVP, right? I mean, transcendent player of the 90s, won a Super Bowl with those Giants, largely because he was so unblockable. But I won't steal your thunder.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. He's just a force on defense. One of the more famous defensive players of all time across any era. Anyone knows who Lawrence Taylor is, not just if you've watched The Blind Side, but if you know football, you're going to know Lawrence Taylor. But then going on to the unifier, I really hope we don't have the same one, because when you talk about the history of the game, you cannot leave a particular quarterback off of this list.
Yeah, we have the same one.
We have the same one. We also are finishing with Tom Brady.
You can't leave Tom Brady off. If either of us left Tom Brady off, I wouldn't respect us as NFL podcast hosts.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the reason I put him as like the unifier is because he unified everyone in a particular way. Everyone hated him. Everyone hated Tom Brady. He spilled us like in the day of him playing, people hated Tom Brady. But then when he stepped away, his legacy grew. That's kind of how Lincoln was too. Lincoln was very controversial. A lot of people didn't like and support the war going on. But then after he won the war and then got assassinated, like his legacy grew. So and he's just one of the best of all time. Like he is the greatest quarterback of all time. That is undebatable. Lincoln is one of the greatest presidents of all time. That is undebatable. He fits the Lincoln mold.
I think that's a great argument. And I don't really have anything else to add besides the fact that I think there's a statistic out there that Tom Brady participated in something like 25% or like 25% of all NFL players in the Super Bowl era have played against Tom Brady or something like that. He's just been such a huge part of the modern era of the NFL. He's also participated in a lot of the Super Bowls. So yeah,
he participated in what, 10 total Super Bowls?
Something like that. It's just an absurd
And we
amount.
just got through Super Bowl 61, which is 1/6 of all Super Bowls. Yeah. At this point in time, it's about 16% of all Super Bowls ever Tom Brady played in.
That was probably what I was referencing, but yeah, unbelievable, and certainly deserves that Lincoln spot. Because and I also think it's a little poetic because the Lincoln and the Washington spots in our eyes are both quarterbacks, but it's Jefferson and Roosevelt, right?
Yeah, it's Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, Lincoln. That's Mount Rushmore.
And then the Jefferson and the Roosevelt are both a non-quarterbacks, which I think makes more sense because those, if you think Washington and Lincoln, those are the quarterbacks of the presidents, and Jefferson and Roosevelt. Not saying they're not good. I'm just saying they're not the quarterbacks of Rushmore.
Yeah.
So having Taylor and Brady makes a ton of sense. And if you have some free time, just go take a look at Lawrence Taylor's Pro Football Reference page and just see how many first-team All-Pros he racked up. And then that's why Tyler and I picked him as our defensive player. Because, I mean, if I were to even try to pick another defensive player, I couldn't think of one because I was like, I don't want to go Taylor, but I don't have a choice.
Couple defensive players that I had thought about. I'd thought about Troy Polamalu, great safety, but I was like, that's very era-based, not all-time based. I mean, one of the best of all time, but that's if you're thinking Troy Polamalu, you're definitely more thinking about the era than of all time. Kind of thought about Brian Dawkins. I thought about Sean Taylor, but Sean Taylor would have just been legacy, not actual like progression to the game. Just the tragedy that happened is really where his legacy comes from. But it all circled back to Lawrence Taylor. I didn't think any of those options were better options than Lawrence Taylor.
I think one of the only guys that maybe came to mind are Ray Lewis or Ed Reed, two of those Ravens guys.
Ooh, yeah.
I thought about Ray Lewis, but I waffled a little bit because, but I ended up going with Taylor because then I capture more eras too. Because I got the early NFL with Graham, I got the 80s and 90s with Rice, and then I get the 90s and the 80s and 90s with Taylor as well, and then I get the modern era with Brady. So,
yeah, and then another option I thought about with that Jefferson spot where I had said Walter Payton was I actually thought about Barry Sanders. But I think Payton's connection to the 85 Bears, one of the most iconic teams of all time, is kind of what pushed him over the edge over Sanders.
I also thought about putting Barry Sanders on that list, and it's not because of my own personal bias. I never got to watch Barry. I think that Barry is the best running back in NFL history, but I don't think that you can be on Mount Rushmore if you've never appeared or won a Super Bowl. Like, you have to be a part of the big game. All of these guys, except for Otto Graham, who won multiple championships, won a Super Bowl or won the equivalent of the Super Bowl of their era. Mm-hmm. Taylor, Rice, and Brady, of course, won multiple. All of them won multiple. And Graham has multiple.
I was going to say LT also won multiple,
LT has
right?
two.
Yep.
And so all of them have multiple championships. They were at the height of the league that they're representing on Mount Rushmore multiple times. So I think that it's only fair that they get represented. And Barry, unfortunately, is probably the fifth guy off the list. Like, yeah, he's the James Madison, founding father, very brilliant, but he's not on Rushmore, is he?
No, But I'm curious as to what you, viewer, would as your Mount Rushmore. Do you agree with us at Lawrence Taylor and Tom Brady operating the final two spots? And who would your four be?
Yeah, please leave it down in the comments. We would love to see those. But we are going to move on to the main event of tonight, and that's Tyler's NFL scorecard. Definitely going to be pretty complicated. Let me pull that for you while you kind of give us your breakdown of how you came up with this idea.
So, when I look at an MLB scorecard, it has both stats and game flow. When you look at a scorecard, you kind of got to know what numbers mean. If you know F is a flyout, and you see F7, if you know the numbers, like there is a bit of complexity there. But once you know the numbers, you can see the flow. So I have on this one a game flow. You can see on this one a first half, second half, and then overtime, because overtime does sometimes happen. In each row is a drive. The idea is that each team will have this type of paper. Same thing with an MLB scorecard or with a baseball scorecard. There's one paper for one team and there's another paper identical to the other team. So that first row is the first drive of the first half. Whatever happens, that second row is the second drive, third drive, so on. And then if you don't fill out all the drives, that's fine. When the second half comes, you start on the first line of the second half, and so on and so forth. Now, each column now is essentially a play or thing that happens. So that far left column, though, where you see it a little bit extra bolded on surrounding, this is going to identify the yard line that you start in. And this is going to be the first abbreviations that you would need to know. Because the 17-yard line, for example, which 17-yard line? Did you get an interception and you're starting on your own, and you're starting on the opponent's 17, or was it a punt and you're starting on your own? So A is your team's territory. B is the opponent's territory. So if there is a touchback, for example, and you start if the other team punts and it's a touchback, so you're starting at the 20, that yard line marker, that first box would say A20. It means you're starting on your own 20-yard line. And then you go on. And then essentially there is a lot of abbreviations here, but a lot of them are pretty explanatory. If you run the ball, it's R. If you pass the ball, it's P. If you punt the ball, it's PT, right? If you get sacked, it's an S. If you throw an incomplete pass, it's an I. If you throw an interception, it's INT. A lot of those are very standard, very easy to remember. So even though there is a lot of abbreviations, it's very easy to remember. Most of them make sense. I think A and B is the only one that doesn't make sense. The only other one is penalties, because P is already taken for pass. So a penalty is an E. In my mind, it's like an error.
Yeah,
if a defenseman makes an error, so it's an E. And then the yardage. So if I commit a false start, I'm going to go E -5. I committed I committed a penalty, and I lost my team 5 yards. Consequently, if the opponents commit a penalty for you, it's a positive number. It's an E5. So that might be an offsides. If my opponents committed pass interference and I got 15 yards on the play, it would be E15 and then a circle. Because as you can see on the bottom, whenever you got a first down, you circle it. And then the final column is where you ended. So if you punted the ball from your own 45, then that box would say A45 because you punted it from your own 45. But if it's a field goal, you put an X, and if it's a touchdown, you fill it in. This is what it would look like as an example. So I created my own scorecard, and I filled out the play using Super Bowl 58. So throughout that, I want to notice the right column first. You can identify very quickly 2 boxes that are filled in. So you can see, the Chiefs scored 2 touchdowns in this game. And then you also see a few X's, so you can see that this made up of a handful of field goals and then a couple touchdowns. And then when you look at the detailed account, on the second half, I left a space in between the starting yardage and the first play, and I think that makes the second half look a lot better than the first half. Because that first half is just all jumbled together. You don't know what's going on. But that second half, you can see, okay, they started. Here's where they started. Here's the drive progression. And then there's, on the far part, is the end. And then, of course, on the far right side, you can see the updated score each time as well.
But
and then overtime.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great stuff in here. There's these interceptions that occur at the yard line, which you write down and then have your ending yard line. First, you have your scores, and I think you wrote down the yard lines of the field goals that occurred underneath those field goals. Is that something that you decided later that you weren't going to do?
The field goal is actually the distance. So if you see that first field goal in the second half there, if you scroll, now go over to the last play in that drive. So
57 yard.
K57, a 57-yard field goal, correct.
Got it.
Now, this is where the scorer can kind of have their own discretion. If you see the number, because I put the distance number and then an X. That can be scores discretion. They can just put an X because it was a field goal and it already shows the distance if you look to the left. So you can put the yardage and then the X, or you can just put an X. That one's up to the score on that one. But I'll kind of break down what a drive looks like. So go to the overtime drive.
Yeah.
So you see in the overtime drive, you see a 25. So that means the Chiefs started at their own 25-yard line. So now when you go into the progression, R3, that's a rush for 3 yards. Now, the only problem with this game flow progression version is you can't tell who did it. That could have been Mahomes. It could have been Pacheco. Could have been Clyde. It was not Clyde. I'll give you that. It was not Clyde. But it could be. So that's the only thing is you can't keep track of stats. But the pro is that you can definitely see game flow. You can see, wow, the Chiefs sucked in the first half with only one good drive. But they did a lot better in the second half. And so that's where they came back and how they came back. But going back to that overtime drive. So you see R3 and then P6. Okay, so they've gained 9 yards so far, 3 yards off of rush, and then 6 yards on a passing. And then that says R0. I apologize for my handwriting, but that's R0, a rush for 0 yards, bringing up 4th down. We have this next play is where you see R8 with a circle. That is a rush for 8 yards and a 1st down. This is where Mahomes in overtime on 4th down rolled out to the right. He had the option to throw to his, I believe, tight end is who was there in the flat, but he ended up taking off for a 1st down, extending the game. But that's where that is. The next one, it says P-3. So that is a pass for -3 yards. That's your infamous Valdez-Scantling play, where he caught the ball and then ran backwards. You remember that play?
Yeah, it reminded me of vintage DeMarcus Robinson, where he would just run backwards.
Yeah, so P-3, a pass for -3 yards, and then P7, then P13. So 1st down, that 13-yard pass gave him 1st down, so I circled it. You go on to a 4-yard pass, a 5-yard pass, a 19-yard run for a 1st down, and then a 3-yard run, a 7-yard pass for a 1st down. And then notice that final one has a little box around it. That's another one where it can be scores discretion. I put a little box around that P3, but and then as you see on the far right side, it's filled in. So that tells you that the drive ended off a 3-yard pass for a touchdown.
Yeah, and I really like this view because it kind of like you mentioned earlier. Yes, you're not tracking stats, but I think it serves a different purpose than stats. It serves to show how well a team performed and how well a team flowed throughout the game. Like you observed, these are all almost 3 and outs, all of them, except for this drive, which ended in a fumble on the 5th play of the drive.
Yeah, but that's actually a close, and this is where you can kind of like get lost a little bit because look at what's right before. Can you read what number that says right before that fumble?
88.
It says P52. The fumble on the 3rd drive.
Oh, P52. I thought you were saying here.
Right before that is a 52-yard pass. So like the Chiefs were about to score, and then they fumbled it. And so that's where you can see on that right side, it's like, oh, where did they fumble it? So they fumbled it. And then on the far right side there, it says B9. They fumbled on the San Francisco 9-yard line.
Right. And yeah. But
San Francisco has their own sheet just like this, but this is the Chiefs sheet.
Right. Either way, though, like I do think that this shows that the Chiefs struggled to sustain drives and be efficient in the first half, and they sustained more drives and scored more in the second half. And of course, their best drive came in overtime, tied for the longest number of plays. You can see that immediately as you look at it. You can be like, okay, these long ones with all the numbers, those are the best drives of the game. These ones with the short numbers, either something catastrophic happened or they were 3 and outs. I think it gives such an interesting look back at a football game because there's nothing really out there like it. If you go right now and look up Super Bowl 58 and you click on all the tabs, there's like the overview, stats, news. There's nothing like this that gives you a snapshot of it. And that's why I think this is so utilitarian.
You can also use this to really identify trends too. So like if you can also look at, well, why couldn't the Chiefs sustain drives? Well, on that first drive, we had a rush for -3 yards to open the game. We opened the Super Bowl with a -3-yard rush. The second drive, what does it say? R4. So I probably forgot to put the punt there on that one. But we had a sack. So the first drive we punted because we started the game with -3 yards. The second drive, you can see a sack for -7 yards. Third one, we fumbled. Fourth drive, we went with I think fumble that we recovered and then just couldn't get the ball going. Starting off in the second half, look at that second drive. It says R0. We had 0 yards gained on that third down. And then on that next drive where we kicked a 57-yard field goal, right before it was P2, pass for only 2 yards. Before that, incomplete.
I mean, look at the sequence here. The Chiefs, after a 22-yard explosive run that no doubt was probably Patrick Mahomes, they went run of 2 yards, incomplete run of 2 yards. I mean, very inefficient.
Yeah.
And that's what I think tells the story is like this team is not efficient. There's not very many circles. There are, outside of this final 2-minute drive, the Chiefs scored 2 first downs in their first 4 drives. That's ridiculous. And you can tell that so immediately from this scorecard. You can be like, okay, this team stunk 2 first downs, but they had 4 first downs and a score by themselves on their final drive. I think that's a great look at the game, and it's all contained in one sheet. So I think it accomplishes the goal of a scorecard. But Tyler, this isn't the only scorecard. Yeah.
It's not, but just like baseball, like if you've got a score book, you're going to have the 49ers sheet right beside you. So when I've got my baseball scorecard, I've got this side is for the visiting team, this side is for the home team. You could do the exact same thing in football, but that's a game flow version. I also have another one where it's stats based if you want to go ahead and show that one. This is a stats-based one. So the idea here is that on the left side, you've got your number, you've got your player, very similar to baseball. And then each of those small boxes is up to 20 things that player could do. So as you see in the example, you could do C or R for catch and rush. So if you have an 18-yard reception, it's going to go down as C18. If you rush for 5 yards, you go R5. Now, sometimes a player will touch the ball more than 20 times. And this is where maybe there's a kink to work out, if I'm being honest. What I did for Pacheco and Christian McCaffrey is I had a rushing item for Pacheco and a reception item for Pacheco. I also did the same thing for Christian McCaffrey. I had a receptions tab to where all I needed to put was like 6 in, since it was like, all right, well, this whole thing is all going to be catch for 6 yards. And then I had another one for rushes as well. So, and then at the very end, where the boxes get a little bit bigger, you've got your stats that you total up at the end, kind of like at-bats, hits, runs. You've got attempts, yards, catches, yards, touchdowns, fumbles. And then the bottom is kind of your quarterback and kicking stuff. That's kind of like a pitching stats on a baseball scorecard. You kind of just total them up and or just have it at the end. But that's kind of like where your quarterbacks and kicking stats is going to be kind of like the pitching for baseball.
Gotcha. Man, imagine a game where you have to fill up the majority of these 14 punt boxes. Oh, wow.
And that's like sometimes there are. Like sometimes there are some 10 punt games. It's much better to have, and kind of like with the play sequence as well, chances are you're not going to have 20 plays in a drive. Every now and then you might have one, and so I wanted to make sure there was room for that.
Right.
Most players are not going to touch the ball 20 times in a game, but they might, and I want to make sure there's room for that.
Right.
Because Christian McCaffrey actually did in that game. If you with overtime, he got up to 22 carries. In which case, I just went on to the next line, and if someone's already filling up the next line, you can maybe just add another line down there. Might make things a little bit more confusing, and maybe that's where there's a little kink to figure out. But do you have the example that I used?
Yes.
Here's the example, okay? And that one that's very clearly filled out, that is Christian McCaffrey's rushes. So you see at the very top, it's CMC, and my penmanship is horrible, but that's supposed to be a C with a circle. So all of those are Christian McCaffrey's catches. And then notice on that top line, there's a little box. That's a catch for 21 yards. And because it's boxed, it tells you there's a touchdown. So it's got Elijah Mitchell. You see rush for 7, rush for 16. I think there was a penalty on that 16-yard rush because the final stats only showed 2 rushes for 8 yards. So I think there had to have been a penalty somewhere, and that's why he only has 8 yards when he had 7-yard rushing and 16-yard rushing. So that's just me making an error as the scorer. But it's not a flaw in the design necessarily. I just wrote down 16 when it was probably 8 because of the penalty or something. Kyle Juszczyk, you see a catch for 18 yards, a rush for 2 yards, and then a catch for 13 yards. Brandon Ayuk, he had catch for 18, catch for 20, and then catch for 11. Juwan Jennings, he had a catch for -8 yards, a catch for 17 yards, a 10-yard touchdown catch, and then a catch for 23 yards, and then so on. And then you go to Christian McCaffrey's rushing yards where you've got rush for 6 yards, rush for 11, rush for 2, rush for 3, rush for 4, -4, and so on and so forth.
But yeah, no.
And then at the very end, I put Brock Purdy because you can always assume the quarterback's going to scramble at least once. So I just put them at the end. Brock Purdy had a 24-yard rush, a 4-yard rush, and that -1 is actually him taking a knee. But then you've got a couple sacks that negated his stats as well. So maybe I should put sack numbers on there too.
So interesting little tidbit here. Are these his official stats, or is that just your?
Those are his official stats. So what I did when I filled this out is I went on the Gamecast from ESPN and then just marked every play as I would. But then I looked at the box score. So I kind of cheated a little bit on the official stats at the end. So the official stats is Brock Purdy, 3 rushes for 12 yards. So I don't know if I screwed up somewhere in documenting it, but that is his official game stats.
Interesting. I thought that sacks were minus net team passing yards, but didn't count against the player's rushing yards. But obviously, if that was what the official was.
I screwed up somewhere as the scorer because I was rushing through it, but I don't think that negates the system. I think the system works. I just screwed up.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was like a holding penalty on that 28-yard run, 24-yard run, so he only gained like 7 yards.
Right.
Or 8 yards, whatever the math would be.
I think this one is a little bit worse than your other design for a scorecard. I really like the other one because I think there's actually more efficient ways to view the stats. Maybe this is the best way to track the stats live, or one of the best ways. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's better ways to view the stats. And when I view this from, a 10,000 foot view, I don't get a good picture of really anything besides the fact that CMC touched the ball quite a bit. That's about it. Like nothing leaps off the screen for me. But when I look at this, I get to see a picture of team performance. And there's no real way to look at this outside of it. The only complaint I have with this view is there's no way to chart the rare 1-point safety. There probably is, but I'm just joking.
Do you happen to have the San Francisco 49ers example here?
No. Of
the game flow.
No, I do not.
So in the game, the San Francisco 49ers actually had a blocked PAT. So what I wrote at the end is let's go to that Chiefs touchdown one. Let's pretend in that second half. It's the fourth drive of the second half. Let's just pretend that Butker's extra point got blocked on that. I would still fill it in. I would still write P16 with a block, but then honestly, what I would write is I would write B PAT, blocked PAT, and then if it's returned for a 1-point safety, maybe in that space afterwards, I literally write 1-point safety or B PAT 1-point safety.
I mean, it would truly be so unique that there's no need.
Another thing you could do is because you also have on the far right side the number of points that each team has at any given time, and it gets updated so at the end of that drive, this was the score. So maybe you just write BPAT, which the 49ers example does have, but then on your score you just put the score. So let's pretend Butker's kick had been blocked there and it was returned for a 1-point safety. I'd probably just write BPAT, but then write score in the score boxes on the right side. I would write 11 and 14.
Got it.
Instead of 10, 13, of course.
It would just reflect on that box. Okay.
Yeah. Because what that would show is the previous drive, it was 10-6. Now it's 11 to 14 or 11 to 12. That means they didn't get their extra point, and the Niners got a point. So that means that note that says BPAT, blocked PAT, must have resulted in a 1-point safety. So like just kind of ways that you can go about that and know what happened. Very similar in baseball.
Right.
If someone writes 6-4-3, nowhere on the scorecard does it specifically state that was a double play. But if you see on a scorecard 6-4-3, you know that's a double play.
Right. And that's what I really like about this. And I think that maybe if you guys like it, we'll share this out and let you guys fill out some scorecards for some interesting games and see if it works. But I think we're going to fill this one out for our That's DPI on location in Nashville. Like, I think this will be really, really cool to give a shot.
Do we have an announcement? Did we just announce something?
We may have just announced that we're going to Nissan Stadium this year. That one's pretty certain, right?
There are two certain, to be honest. Yeah. I don't know if we can. If we announce this one, let's announce the second one next episode. So you guys got to wait around and see where else we're going this year.
We can announce both too. You guys that stayed 38 minutes in the video are getting a sneak peek as to where that CPI is going in December. But we'll announce both officially at the beginning of next video. But yes, sneak peek. Tennessee Titans fans get excited, but
we will be there.
But I think that's about all we have on the scorecards. I really like it. I think we're gonna keep talking about it when we do it in season this year. Super cool.
And just like a baseball scorecard, the first time you fill it out ever, you're gonna be like, I don't know what to put here. Was that a line out or a fly out? How do I mark foul out versus a fly out? How do but as you fill it out, it's like, oh, this makes sense. It pop out to the shortstop. Oh, okay. P6. Okay, this makes sense. Oh, he rushed for 5 yards. R5. A lot of it makes sense a lot as you get going, because I practiced it and I had to make some tweaks. So you see some notes at the top where I made some notes. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about this scenario. I got to add this. But then on the blank one that Zach shared is all of the abbreviations, because there's so many things that can happen in football.
Right.
In baseball, it's really like 4 things, but to any of the positions. There's so many things that can happen in football, so there's so many abbreviations. But if you follow along, use the abbreviation cheat sheet portion at the bottom, it actually becomes a lot simpler. And I'm kind of excited to. I'll probably try and fill this out a couple times, maybe in the preseason game.
Yeah, I think that would. I'm going to as well. Maybe we watch a preseason game and each do one for the other team.
Yeah.
But I really think that there is a viable way for the NFL to have a scorecard, and maybe it catches on. But we do have one final thing for you, and that is a ref call of the week, everyone's favorite segment. And of course, if there's an obscure rule that negatively affects a team, odds are it has happened to my Lions. And this is on Thanksgiving in 2012. So we'll go ahead and play this clip. It's a handoff. I believe that's Matt Schaub handing off. I don't know which running back that is. Maybe it's Steve Slayton. I don't remember.
Is it Foster?
I don't think it was Foster, but because Foster is 23. Oh yeah, Justin Forsett.
Oh yeah. Okay. But whoever it is, yeah. So Forsett
scores an 82-yard touchdown.
Right. And the Lions sideline's not happy.
Well, right, exactly. And if you watch it back, the guy was clearly down, because boom, forearm is a down. You can also make the argument that the knee touched there. So he's double.
Not an argument. The knee is down.
So this is definitely 2 parts down. He just kept running because his little league coach told him to always run through the play. But the problem with this play is that it was so obviously, a bad call that Jim Schwartz, the Lions head coach, challenges it immediately. And I don't know if we have ref audio here, but what he's explaining is that because Jim Schwartz challenged it, they can't review. They're not going to overturn the call anymore, and it stands, even though the correct call would be to call him down. It's a penalty to challenge it, and so they can't overturn it if he challenged. It's such a backwards rule, but do you have more context on this one?
A little bit. So at the time, and this is where we get a call that changed the rules. That's our series this offseason. So the call was, or the rule at the time was, if you challenge a play that is reviewable, it can no longer be reviewed. If you challenge a play, or let me go back. If you challenge a play that's automatically reviewed, then you cannot review. And I've never understood why that was the rule, but that was the rule.
The rule was so backwards. The rule was so backwards. It was, if you challenge on an automatically reviewable play, that's technically a delay of game, and it causes you to be unable to review.
Okay.
It's arbitrary. They're arbitrarily, because of the rule book, could not review that play because Jim Schwartz committed the delay of game, which is so annoying. And that's why at the end of that clip, you see Jim Schwartz going, "Hey, my bad," because the automatic review system was a very new rule. I think it was either the year prior or 2 seasons prior that touchdowns and turnover plays became automatic reviews. Automatic booth reviews.
Yes. And that's even the case today, is that if someone scores a touchdown, it has to be confirmed. Now, when someone walks into the end zone, like most of the time, it's like, yep, that's it. But if it's close, every now and then you'll see a play where they kind of hold back the kicker. They don't say the play is under review. Sometimes they do, but they don't all. But sometimes there's a situation where they don't announce the play is under review, but they kind of stand in front of the kicker for a moment, because that's the booth confirming the call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and automatic reviews happen on every touchdown and turnover. But like you said, if Jared Goff throws it directly to a Texans defender, they're obviously not going to need to review if the Texans defender caught the ball. It's an interception. But on those fumble plays, they always review it. And so the Jim Schwartz rule was then created the following season that says if a coach decides to challenge an automatically reviewable play, it's still going to be a penalty. The team will be charged a timeout. If the team has no timeouts remaining, they will receive a 15-yard penalty. But the play will still be reviewed regardless. And if the team wins the review, it will not get its timeout back. So if you challenge, no matter what, you're losing a timeout on an automatically reviewable play. But I don't think we've seen this happen in the NFL since. I don't think we've seen a challenge on an automatically reviewable play anymore because coaches have gotten a lot better.
Well, that and just the rule has now been in place for so many years. And I'm not even sure if that wasn't the first year that rule was in play.
Right. It may have been.
In which case, it's very plausible for a coach to not know that that's automatically reviewed, which is just the epitome of the 2012 Lions, of the Lions at that point in time, where a coach wouldn't know a rule like that. But yeah, we definitely haven't seen it anymore just because people now know it's automatically reviewed.
Yeah, I think that, prior to the 2011 season. So it was 2 years
so this
prior
was year
to 2012. But it was a very new rule for the NFL, and especially with how obvious of a downed play that the running back was. I don't blame Jim Schwartz. I don't think Jim Schwartz, you have to know the rules, but it was probably like the first time that had ever happened to him.
Yeah.
And he just kind of took the bullet so that all other coaches never make that mistake again. Which the Lions taking the bullet on a ref call seems to happen way too often. Can we stop taking bullets? Why are we so heroic? Why are we the guinea pigs of NFL penalties?
No, literally.
But that one's an interesting one because the Texans would go on to win that game in overtime by 3. And in a game that could have flipped the Detroit Lions season and brought them to a respectable 5-6 record, they dropped to 4-7. And they proceeded to lose the rest of the games that year. They finished 4-12. So not saying that was a catalyst to the implosion of the 2012 Lions, but that's certainly the inflection point where it all went downhill. But luckily, they've changed the rule since. And reviews, I imagine, are going to be a point of contention in the NFL in the next 10 years. The review process as it stands now will not be the same in 10 years, guaranteed.
100%. It's always changing, especially as we get more technology to, like, should this be automatically reviewed? Should we automatically review face mask penalties? Should we be able to review roughing the passer penalties? Those are current questions that the NFL Rules Committee is debating, and it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. I'm excited to use technology. I think we should be using technology, but yeah, to reiterate your point, it will be interesting to see where it goes.
Isn't it? Yeah, you're right. I think that they're still looking at those, but nothing's been confirmed that they're automatically reviewable yet with face masks.
Correct. Yeah. I think I said automatic, but the question of should it be able to be reviewed is.
No, you're right. I was just making sure that it was confirmed that whether or not it was confirmed that those penalties would become reviewable or not. But similar to how pass interference was a few years ago when that was immediately taken away. But that's about all we have for you guys. There's only a couple more weekends until we get to watch preseason football. It's not real football returning quite yet, but last year the Hall of Fame game was in July. So I don't know when the Hall of Fame game is, but I'm assuming it's the first week of August.
I think it's August 1st, if I'm not mistaken. August 1st or 2nd
this year. August 6th.
Oh, it's 6th? I was way off.
Panthers and Cardinals. So we are just under 4 weeks away, or just over 4 weeks away. No, I think it's just under 4 weeks away from our first snap of preseason football. So we have a few more off-season episodes. And of course, training camp is coming up too. So we're excited to bring you all that content. But until then, thank you guys for watching.
Appreciate you guys.